Welcome to Killer Women with your host, best-selling author Danielle Girard. And now, Danielle's next killer woman.
Welcome to Killer Women Podcast, a proud member of the Authors on the Air global network with more than 4 million listeners. I am your host, suspense author Danielle Girard, and my guest today is Kate Belli. Kate is the author of The Gallery Assistant and the widely praised Gilded Gotham historical mystery series. She holds a doctorate in art history and has variously worked as an antiques appraiser, a museum curator, and a college professor. Kate is currently a gallery director at a Pennsylvania college. Find out more about Kate at katebelli.com. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my God, thank you for being here. So this fabulous book, and you gotta go, if you're listening to us and not watching us, you gotta go look at the Gallery Assistant cover. Isn't that so fun?
It is.
Covers are the best part.
Yes. And I love my cover. I'm
It's-
biased, but I think it's
it's
great cover.
gorgeous. It's gorgeous. So before we dig into all fun things, tell us a little bit about the Gallery Assistant.
So the gallery assistant is about a young woman who is the titular gallery assistant. And it takes place in the months immediately following 9/11 in New York City. So November and December 2001. She comes into work one day and finds out that the party she was at last night, the painter who hosted the party has turned up murdered. And she was the last person to leave the party. So she has very little memory of what happened, and bad things start happening.
So it's interesting. I noticed your dedication is to a friend who sounds like was also at 9/11.
Yes. She was my roommate, my friend Celeste, who's still one of my best friends, and she and I were roommates in Brooklyn on 9/11. I spent most of the day in Manhattan myself at my gallery where I worked.
Yeah.
And yeah.
What a crazy day. So I know there's been a lot of conversation around featuring 9/11. I think for a long time, people were like, it was like the pandemic.
Right.
Don't write about it. It's too soon. And yet now visiting it, I felt like we've got enough distance from it. It was such a pivotal time in this country's history to get to visit it in this way was really, I thought, really fun. I mean, not fun is the wrong word probably, but really sort of felt relevant and entertaining. So what was it like to write about it?
Yeah, well, I've long thought that moment immediately following, especially in New York, though I'm sure everywhere,
Yeah.
certainly nationally, possibly, probably globally, it felt very dystopian.
Yeah.
The city was altered irrevocably if you were physically there. And we all kind of held our breath for a long time waiting. And again, I think possibly globally, kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah.
And that just created this very uncertain time. And I just had thought for a long time that would make a really fascinating backdrop for a thriller.
Yes.
Because when you're already in a chaotic moment, an uncertain moment, what happens when you layer crime on top of that? How do you tell truth from fiction when everything feels like a conspiracy theory?
And it's true. I mean, she visits a bar where there's, and some people seem a little bit more out of whack on the conspiracy theories, but in that moment, kind of anything was game.
Yeah.
We were all sort of like, well, sure, we thought this could never happen, so maybe
Right.
that could happen too. I mean,
Right.
it absolutely was. And she's an unreliable narrator, which
Yeah.
is, so tell us about writing that, because, she's drinking rather heavily, which
Yeah.
of course makes sense in light of what she's just been through and reliving that day when she was in the towers.
Yes, she was at ground zero when the towers were falling. And yeah, so she has, and I don't think this is a spoiler. We learn this very quickly at the beginning of the book, undiagnosed PTSD, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Or that's how I wrote her. So yeah, to have that unreliable narrator, I guess I wanted her to still be very likable though, and in some ways relatable. Also just a person in a big city in her mid-20s kind of trying to find herself.
Yeah.
But again, against this backdrop of, chaos and uncertainty with this whole other added layer.
Right.
So it was somewhat based on my own experience. I was not nearly as a hot mess as my protagonist was, but
Fair.
I was also, as were all of my friends, young people in our 20s in the city trying to find ourselves.
Yeah.
And 9/11 happened, and really everyone broke up or got married. It led people to do very extreme choices, I should say.
Right.
Behavior became extreme. I think I remember reading once that some of the industries that really boomed after 9/11 were alcohol for sure, candy and sweets,
Yeah.
and tattoos.
Interesting.
The tattoo.
Well, it is sort of like you feel like, I mean, you probably never experienced being so close to death, right?
Right.
Especially as a young, like in your 20s.
Yeah.
Death seems, eons away.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, you're faced with something where people your own age died. Many of them
Right.
died blocks away from wherever you were. And so of course it feels like, it's the right time to decide to get tattoos or drink too much or get married or divorced or break up or what, all those things.
All the things.
And it isn't as if it isn't hard enough to be, in your 20s trying to figure things out, like layered on that. So Chloe, of course, and she's, and the other aspect of it is her roommate, Vic.
Yes.
Who is a, person of color.
Mhm.
And then, he was experiencing, the other ugly side of that, which was sort of vast discrimination against anybody who wasn't sort of Anglo looking.
Right.
And so that also probably was a real thing. I mean, continues to be a real thing. So.
Right. I do think that there were more incidences of that kind of racism against people of color, of Southeast Asian background or Middle Eastern background outside of New York City, from what I understand.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. But it was still very much a reality, and I think a very fearful time, not just for everybody, but especially if you were, again, Southeast Asian, Indian, Sikh, who wears wearing a turban, perhaps. We know some of the people who died, again, in other parts of the country were mistaken for Muslims. They were Sikh, and he was killed. I did want to have that element in there.
Yeah. I felt that. And then on top of it, he's a gay man.
Yes.
Sort of hiding his sexual orientation from his family. It's very traditional. I mean, all those things feel very, relevant to that time.
Yes.
I mean, they still happen, but I like to think we're, a little more evolved.
Yeah.
Potentially, although maybe less evolved in other ways,
Yeah,
without getting into it. But so what was
Yeah.
it? So your other series had been sort of historical.
Yes,
And
really
even though-
historical mystery.
Yeah,
So
it's sort of historical. I mean, but it really is more contemporary.
it's, it's funny because both at Thriller Fest and then here at BoucherCon, I've been on panels about historical mysteries with this book. And it's so funny because when I started writing it, my other books are set in the 1880s and 90s. This, of course, felt very contemporary. It's a moment I lived through, it's in my living memory. It's, 24 years ago. So I was thinking, this is a contemporary, but more and more, I think it's getting sort of cast into a historical moment. And when I'm a professor, as well as a gallery director at my college, and one of the things I teach is museum studies. And I use the National Museum of American History, the Smithsonian's collecting of 9/11 objects as a case study in my class. And it was really through my students over the last maybe 2 years, while I've been more deeply involved with this book, 3 years, seeing that there's a whole generation of folks for whom this is history.
Yeah.
This moment is history, that they have no living memory.
Right.
Of
Both of my
9/11.
children, and they're like 20, almost 26 and almost 24, and they don't, I mean, one wasn't born and one, has no memory of this. So it's so weird. I'm like, how can that be? Because I'm still like 29. I don't really understand how this works.
Yes, I'm 30 forever. So,
Math is very confusing. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. But it was really thinking about making that shift for me mentally to start to think about what does that mean, when does history happen? When do we start? When do we draw that line about what's historical and what's not? But especially for thrillers, I think there's such a large audience, and consumer of thrillers are folks in their 20s and folks who might have no memory of this. So, I mean, I would like it to be accessible and interesting to all audiences, people who are.
Well, people know what this is. I mean, obviously.
Yeah,
I mean, I think, but I think that you handle it, it's really beautifully handled too, because it is, it was a real thing, and yet you're not into the nitty gritty of what the politics of the time were, what actually that day was like. It's really just, it is about it's about one or several people's experience of this really difficult time at a very sort of tender age. And I want to talk about we do Killer Women. I'm wearing my Killer Women sweater, my fabulous, and we're matching. Look at all, I mean, they are literally, and actually even like Pinky's fur sort of like fits in here. So
It does.
So I know, I'm like, now that I have my
tones in the
Yeah.
hands.
we did a really good job there. We didn't even talk about it. We just It's all that ESP we have
Yep.
going on. But I want to talk about the female aspect because Chloe's very much sort of gaslit
Yeah.
in ways that I think to even now, 25, 24 years later, I think women more than men get gaslit in these ways. Where at her work, you know, she works for a father-daughter, you know, gallery, very wealthy people under the tutelage of a lovely man named Lou, who sort of, you know, vanishes and from her workplace. And she's, you know, they try to convince her that, you know, oh no, everything's normal, everything's normal. And I mean, do people, you know, how does that happen to us? Like, you know, what is it about women that makes us sort of more, I mean, not that men aren't susceptible, but we are sort of more susceptible.
Well, that's probably a long,
I
corny
know.
answer, right?
I know.
You know, going back into the patriarchy is the
Yes.
easy answer, right?
Yes, right,
And
right.
then, yeah,
But you
and I
feel
do
for
think it's
Chloe, yeah.
something that young women certainly was rife in the workplace for young women throughout the 20th and early 21st century. I hope things are changing, you know, quite a lot, but and I think there has been a shift. I do think some more young women feel, from what I am gathering again on like social media, not being that age anymore myself, let's be honest, but I feel like they're young women today have more empowerment or feel more empowered to push back sometimes in their situation.
Yeah, I hope so. But it's interesting too that, you know, the daughter, Sloane, who is the, you know, the daughter of the gallery owner and now very active in the gallery, they're not that, the age isn't that different.
No.
So there's an interesting, you know, was that a sort of conscious decision to make Sloane a woman and sort of have these two, you know, like-aged women, you know?
I was thinking about it also in terms of like of class almost.
Yes,
and, you know,
very
status.
much. Yeah.
That, you know, Sloane, you know, vacations in the Hamptons. That's where she weekends.
Yeah.
And Chloe would go to Coney Island.
Yes.
And this was also very much my experience as someone, this is very loosely based. So I drew from my own experience about living in Brooklyn, but working in this very she moneyed space when I was a baby art historian graduate student. And I remember very distinctly feeling that disparity about how, wow, you know, these people, the other women, some of the other women that I work with who are in more positions of power are close to my age and have such incredibly different lives.
Right. I mean, she has that wall in her apartment where she can fit that massive piece of art, which, you know, and for Chloe, she would have to fold the art into 9 pieces to fit in, you know, her room or her apartment.
Yeah, they probably couldn't even get up the stairs.
Exactly. It's so true. Right. Exactly. So yeah, I mean, I think that's another reality of that world. And that's really a reality of the art world.
Yes, 100%.
And you're, you know, as that being your, I mean, well, you must have seen also these artists who are sort of starving and then all of a sudden they're not starving. Right. What an interesting world to live in, because I mean, it's not that different really than what we do, right? We're oftentimes not really compensated even enough for like to have sort of a living wage. But these, but what is that about? I mean, you know, how is it like to experience these people you know are hugely talented and yet can probably, you know, barely afford to live in, certainly in the New York area.
Right, there's that that sort of what they call the pink collar industries, right? Instead of white collar, blue collar, the art industries. And there is still sort of an old boys network even in those industries. And even though female dominated, but still often male led at the top. And then you do see a disparity in pay. So it is, I think, get too much into it, but it does tie into gender and, you know, and again, class and connections.
Yeah.
And the art world is certainly is very guilty of it, but I do think publishing also, you know,
which isn't art. I mean, I think it's
absolutely writing.
The
creative fields. I hear journalism is another one where we see this.
Music, I'm sure it's everywhere.
Sure,
it's everywhere.
Where you can have these extreme disparities of wealth and status even in the same industry. Because really, like there's this, we're seeing early in the gallery assistant where Chloe goes to an auction with her boss Lou, and you know there's this extreme amounts of money being thrown around. That, you know, I think at one point she thinks, you could buy a small island with that, like we could with that amount of money. And I did want to explore that. That's something that I explore a lot in my Gilded Gotham series too, the sort of really extreme disparities of wealth. Sort of like it's at 2 ends of the spectrum. And it's curious to think about how it's still, you know.
In some ways even more now than kind of ever before. Yeah, that's fun. So now when you're writing a book, you imagined, obviously you sort of, I imagine it had this first scene. The flashbacks and the waking up and not hearing the artist is dead. How do you sort of create a story? What's your process?
I actually start often with some like a pivotal scene, maybe a sort of a climactic scene. So I don't want to give too much away,
No.
but there is a very climactic scene that takes place at the old Domino Sugar
I was
Factory.
gonna say, I think I know what scene we're talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah.
And
So you started there.
I started there. So originally the book started there, and then I did a backtrack leading up to that moment.
Okay.
And it was actually my agent, who is a wonderful sort of creative partner with a lot of my projects. Yeah, it's great. And Lisa Jewell's interview yesterday, she said how much she loved being edited, and I feel the same. Like I love a good
Thank
edit.
God, right?
Yeah.
Come help me from myself, right?
So when, my agent said, I think that sets up this idea that this book is going to be like a thrill and chasing a thrill and a chase every single second. And it's not. It kind of is a build to get there. So we moved that scene out. But that was the moment I had. I had this sort of picture of what happens at the Domino Sugar Factory.
Yes.
In my brain. That was the first scene I wrote. And then, I knew I wanted to sort of backtrack and build up to that somehow. And then what happens after that?
Yeah, and that is really the end of Act Two. That's kind of, and as the
is.
book is set up now, and you're right, I can see how, because that is a run, chase, hide, kind of very different. I mean, there's a lot of wonderful suspense in this book, but if you set it up like that, it feels like a sort of like a spy thriller. When everyone's on the run and being chased, and it's a very, so that's so smart. Like it's, it sounds like you feel the same way I do, which is I can do so much just with one brain, but then you add some other brains, So you wrote the whole thing, you started with that scene, and then did it largely come back to sort of where you started?
Yes, it came right back to where we start.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so then it was about moving, sort of reframing the beginning.
Right, reframing the beginning and then putting that pivotal scene into its spot where it happens in the book, in the timeline, the chronology. And then, I was also inspired by, again, I don't want to give too much away, but two sort of real life art scandals that happened in the gallery world that I was interested in, that were just so kind of wackadoodle that I felt like I had to use them for inspiration. So I wanted to layer those in.
Yeah, I mean, we don't do spoilers on Killer Women, so we can't talk. You have to go read the book, which is, what you want to do anyway. It's so fabulous. But I also love the idea that Chloe has she's surrounded by these men. She doesn't have family necessarily nearby, but she's got Vic, who is her really, really good friend and her roommate, and Ben is his partner. But sometimes she's the beard.
Yeah.
For Ben, and then she brings him into they show up at Vic's house, and she's the girlfriend for Ben. And then you have these other men, right? I mean, so there's a sort of, and there's a little bit of like who's protecting Chloe and who's not protecting Chloe. And I love that all happens in this little neighborhood.
Yeah.
Did you have that kind of experience where you lived?
Very much. It was a very different neighborhood, Williamsburg, Brooklyn, in the late 90s and early 2000s, certainly than it is now. It changed very, very, very quickly. The gentrification process. And I'm sure I was a part of that. Me and my friends were a part of that because we were sort of among the first wave of folks to move in there in the 90s. When it was just warehouses, and tumbleweeds down the street. It was very empty.
Wow.
Only like,
I didn't think they had those outside Montana.
I know.
I have them, but I didn't realize you had them.
Well, it felt tumbleweedy, sort of the emptiness. It was like, I'm a runner, I'm a distance runner, and I would train, and I could go the whole, run 10 miles around the neighborhood and over the bridges and not pass a single person.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it was empty.
Wow, that is different. That is not what we experience when we're there now.
No, not at all. No, that was like a Hermes pop-up and whatnot. Like it's become very, again, sort of moneyed. It's sort of become the opposite. And so people and I do have one or two friends who from that time who still live there. But not many. Most folks have been either priced out or moved out, and it's still a really fun place to go visit. But
So how about, what originally took you down the sort of art history path? I'm always so curious. Are you an artist as well?
No, I am I really lean into the historian part of art historian. I just fell in love with it in college. I went into college thinking I would be a theater major or an English major, and then I took my first French Impressionism class and thought, well, my gosh, if I could do this with my life, that would be pretty
Well,
cool.
that's so fun.
Yeah.
That's so fun. It seems, I mean, I guess, to somebody who's, I mean, and your parents know sort of artists in
My mom also was an art history
Okay,
major.
okay, so
She
some
doesn't
good,
do,
yeah.
so we always, museums were a big part, but
Okay.
that did not become her profession. It's just
Yeah.
something she also loved. So there was definitely a love of art around.
Which is, I mean, that's
Yeah.
lovely. Mine were like business and medicine, those were the choices.
Yeah.
And so, I did a little of both and was like, this, neither of this is gonna work for me.
Yeah.
This is not my way. So when you figure out, you sort of start with the sugar factory and moved, then, are you somebody who sort of knows, did you figure out exactly how things were gonna go? I mean, when you, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a plotter who then pantses, I guess.
Okay.
So I have an outline.
Okay,
Again, and I think it's because I'm an academic, I like writing with an outline. I
Yeah.
like knowing where I'm gonna go. But usually by sort of a third, the last third of the book, the outline gets more and more vague.
Yeah,
When I
right.
start out, it's sort
Right.
of like, the killer is revealed, but I don't know how yet.
Yeah.
And a lot of things reveal themselves to me as I am sort of following that path. And I will allow myself to stray from the outline if the characters lead me to a different place.
Right, which is lovely, because
Yeah.
then it feels, there's it's organic as well
Right,
as
right.
being sort of like, you feel like you're in control, but, because really this whole process, we're not really, I mean,
No.
I don't know who's in control. Sometimes I'm like, who's driving this bus?
Yeah.
Where are we going? Now, how do you fit this in with like, very, very full life, it sounds like,
Yeah.
and how do you make the writing work?
Oi, you just find the time, right? You just really have to find the time and you have to love it. Not every day, you don't always love it. Some days
Oh.
you're annoyed by it, but
Or worse,
yeah.
more than annoying.
Yeah. But, when my son, so I have a 10-year-old, and when he was really small, when he was a baby, I was one of those people who would get up at 4 a.m. and write, or 5 a.m., and I was part of that. I can't do that anymore. There's like that.
I love that you did it. I'm so
Yeah,
impressed.
I did it for a while, but now I can't do that. And now I tend to write a lot at night.
Okay.
Like there's usually an hour or two at night after my son goes to bed that I just sit and focus.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it has to happen in like large chunks,
Yeah.
Over weekends. And my husband and son are very gracious and lovely, and sometimes they go away.
Yeah, you're like, oh, bless you,
Yeah.
please leave the house. Yeah.
So see family
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
sort of give me a weekend, and then I get major chunks of writing done at that time.
Yeah.
Sometimes these giant, 10-hour days of
Right.
just where then you wind up cross-eyed at the end, but
Of course.
it adds up, I also find. And I find that writing, I think it snowballs for me, like, can start slow, but then writing begets writing. So
Right.
that sort of idea of writing a little bit every day, or at least checking in with the book
I
every
think
day.
I always compare it to like a friend who's in crisis.
Yeah.
It's like if you have a friend who's in a really, really bad spot, you
Mhm.
have to sort of touch base every day to make sure he or she's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
You're like, just proof of life. How are we doing?
Right.
And I think a book is that same way. It's just if you have it in your brain, all the time a little bit, it makes it, otherwise it's so painful.
So hard to get back in.
So hard to get back in.
What was I thinking? Why did I
Yeah.
write this? What's the
Right.
character doing?
Exactly.
Yeah, and you've got to
Make
reinvent
this-
the wheel a little.
Exactly. I think that's super smart. And I also think there's something to having something else to do
Mhm.
that is not writing related, that is sort of, because I think then we let that space clear of the writing, let something happen
Yeah.
in the back of your head, right?
Yeah,
Some magic
yeah.
happens.
And I don't do much academic writing anymore. I did earlier in my career when I was a full-time professor and faculty member, and was looking at tenure and thinking, well, I need to produce academic writing. And I love my field and I love academic research and writing, but now as a director of a gallery, I'm more in an administrative position who teaches at my college. So that actually frees up some time the last couple of years that I've been able to.
Space.
Yeah.
Because writing is, I mean, even though it's not writing, but in
Mhm.
some ways writing is writing.
Yes.
And when you're putting words down for kind of anything, it does sort of, you get to you empty your tank a little
You
bit
do.
on the writing.
Yeah.
So.
That's
So
a great way to put it.
this-
Empty the tank.
So this,
Yeah.
I'm familiar with the half empty tank kind of
Yeah.
at all hours, so that's,
Yeah.
but that's, and so now I'm assuming there's something else you're working on?
Yes.
Can you,
Yes.
I mean, some people, and this is where you get to say, absolutely not, I cannot talk about it. Can you tell us a little?
I can, though it's not finished, but
Yeah,
it's almost finished, but yes, and assuming this is what, they love the concept, so let's hope
Yes, it's always
my
right,
people
right.
love the finished result too. I'm thinking of it as kind of an homage to The Secret History, which is, of course, you know, that OG
Yeah.
dark academia. And so
Yeah.
again, it's the write what you know. I love dark academia.
Yes.
Academic set stories. And this is sort of a, you know, here's this, can I give a Secret History spoiler since it came out in the 90s?
And then if you haven't read The Secret History by now, you deserve to
Yeah.
hear the spoiler.
And actually, it's not really a spoiler because you know right on the first page what happens. I always forget that. But it's sort of what would happen to the gang, a close-knit collegiate gang like that, if Bunny was never found. And then we're at a reunion 15 years later. So it's a dual timeline, the past timeline when one of the group goes missing. And again, that's not a spoiler for the book I'm writing that having, you know, right away this person will be missing. Multi point of view, and then the sort of current day timeline is a, you know, that person's best friend who is determined to find out what happened.
So I love this. You also have kind of this age is special to you.
It is.
There's
Yeah.
like something magic that happens, or you know, and there's a lot of sort of reckoning we have to do in our lives with in those early 20s, figure out who we are and what we're doing. And so that's kind of that sounds like it's you had a particularly you're interested in that.
I am interested in that.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in friendships.
Yes.
I have a lot of, again, my historical mystery series deals a lot with friendship, with female friendship especially. And yeah, this current book that hopefully will be out in a year is very much about, you know, friendships and yeah.
It's such a pivotal time. I mean,
Yeah.
really, we learned so much. Oh my, hopefully I didn't break anything. That's not my equipment. Looks
fine.
okay. It looks
Yeah,
okay.
it looks good.
And it was paperback, so you know, it's the art.
Yeah.
Thank God it's not the finished hardcover. So
No, those just came in today.
they did.
Came into the warehouse, yeah. So
Oh, so excited.
they're
Well,
somewhere in the world. I haven't seen one yet.
we're actually gonna air, I think we're gonna air this the Thursday Killer Women episodes that air on Thursday. So it's coming out the Thursday. So when you're listening to this book is available in the world. You can go find the gallery assistant. Kate, tell us where to find you if people want to figure out where you might be touring. What's your where are you on the World Wide Web?
Where am I? Well, I'm at katebelli.com, Belly BELLI.com. And from there you can find me on Instagram is where I'm most active. I'm also a little bit on Threads. I have a very latent TikTok account that I'm going to attempt to revive. I'm gonna work on TikTok because it's fun and I like seeing, you know, cat videos and stuff, but
Yes, I love it.
I'm feeling inspired to revive that, but that's where I'm most active, those three places.
And is on Instagram Kate Belli.
It's Kate Belli author.
Okay, fantastic.
Kate Belli author, yep. And there will be a launch for the book in New York at the Mysterious Bookshop on October 14th at 6 p.m. So if you're in the New York area and you want to come say hi, we'd love to see you.
Plus, if you haven't been to the Mysterious Bookshop, that
Yes.
is such a magical place.
Yes.
Like, it feels so, you know, it has its own sort of vibe of old, creepy, cool with the tall shelves. And
Yeah,
it's wonderful.
yeah.
So,
It's a wonderful thing.
and we will have a final copy of the gallery assistant that we will be giving away on our at Killer Women podcast on Instagram or Danielle's Killer Women on Facebook. So Kate, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. This was so lovely.
It was so fun. And we did this all about your con, which means we did it kind of feels live, which is new for me. I'm people watching and I'm like, oh gosh, you were fabulous.
So are you. Thank you.
Everyone, thank you for joining us on Killer Women with Kate Belli, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.